The Duke led his men into battle for the king, but returned home to defend the woman he loved. She stood in the center of the great hall, her gown torn at the shoulder, her face bruised, while 200 nobles watched in silence as the magistrate read the charges: attempted murder, witchcraft, and seduction of a peer of the realm. Eleanor Ashford had survived 3 years as a widow in a world that wanted her gone, but she would not survive this night. The chains were already waiting. Then the doors exploded open, and a man in mud-splattered armor strode through the crowd like vengeance itself, his dark eyes finding hers across the sea of judgment, and she knew with terrible certainty that the Duke of Ravencross had returned from war to destroy her or save her. Wait before the next confession unfolds. If this story has already stirred your heart, tell us where you're watching from. To make sure you don't miss the next betrayal, kiss, or redemption, subscribe and join our circle. The next heartbeat might change everything. Now, back to the scene. The silence that followed Adrian Blackwell's entrance was absolute. Eleanor felt the air leave her lungs as his gaze locked with hers, those storm-gray eyes that had haunted her dreams for 3 years, showing no mercy, no warmth. He had left for the continent as a man of 30, with hope still in his heart. He returned at 33, with scars on his face and ice in his veins. "Your Grace," the magistrate stammered, his powdered wig askew. "We did not expect you. The reports said your regiment was still—" The reports were wrong. Adrian's voice cut through the hall like a blade. He moved through the crowd without breaking stride, nobles stumbling aside, until he stood 10 paces from Eleanor. His armor bore the marks of recent battle, dents and scratches that spoke of violence survived. "I received word of this mockery of justice while still 3 days' ride from London. I rode through 2 nights to arrive in time." Lord Pemberton, Eleanor's accuser, stepped forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was a soft man who had grown softer in peacetime, his velvet coat straining across his middle. "Your Grace, how fortuitous! As a peer and neighbor, surely you will want to see justice done. This woman, this widow who has lived on charity in your late brother's estate, attempted to poison me when I made her an honorable offer of marriage." Eleanor's hands clenched at her sides, the chains between her wrists clinking softly. She had refused Pemberton's offer because it had not been honorable. He had cornered her in the library, pressed her against the shelves, whispered what he would do to her once she was his property. When she had pushed him away, when she had threatened to scream, he had stumbled backward into a table where she had been preparing medicines for the tenant's children. The bottle of fever remedy had shattered. He had emerged with a cut on his hand and manufactured this entire catastrophe. "An honorable offer," Adrian repeated, his tone flat. He turned to face Pemberton fully, and Eleanor saw something flicker in the Lord's expression: fear. "Tell me, Pemberton, when did you develop such nobility? Was it before or after you tried to buy your way out of military service while better men died in your place?" The crowd murmured. Pemberton's face flushed crimson. "Your Grace, I've had responsibilities." "As did I, as did every man who answered the king's call." Adrian's hand rested on the pommel of his sword, a casual gesture that somehow felt like a threat. "But we are not here to discuss your cowardice. We are here because you have accused Lady Ashford of crimes that carry a sentence of death." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the assembly. "I assume you have proof?" The magistrate cleared his throat. "Lord Pemberton bears a wound from the poisoning attempt, Your Grace, and there have been rumors." "About Lady Ashford's unnatural knowledge of herbs and remedies," Some say she consorts with dark forces. Some say, Adrian's lip curled, how convenient that some are never named. How convenient that a widow with no family to protect her becomes the target of such vicious gossip. He took a step closer to Eleanor, close enough to she could smell the road dust and leather, close enough to see the new lines etched around his eyes. I knew Eleanor Ashford before she married my brother. I knew her when she was Eleanor Hartley, the physician's daughter who saved half the village from fever when she was barely 17. I knew her when she nursed soldiers back from death's door with those same herbs you now call witchcraft. Eleanor's throat tightened. She had not known Adrian was aware of her work during the early months of the war, before she had married Thomas Blackwell in a ceremony more about necessity than love. Thomas had needed a wife to manage his estates while he served. She had needed protection from a world that had no place for unmarried women of diminished fortune. They had been kind to each other, nothing more. "Your Grace," she said softly, speaking for the first time, "you need not involve yourself in this. Your brother's death released you from any obligation. My brother's death obligated me to many things." Adrian's gaze returned to her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Caring for his widow is among the least of them. "She is accused of attempting to murder a peer," the magistrate said nervously. The law demands evidence, not rumor." Adrian rounded on the man. "Show me the poison. Show me witnesses to the actual crime, not to gossip and conjecture. Show me anything beyond a man's wounded pride and a woman's lack of powerful friends." Pemberton stepped forward, his face now mottled with rage. "Your Grace, are you calling me a liar?" "I am calling you what you are." Adrian's voice dropped to something dangerous. "A man who sees a vulnerable woman and mistakes her for prey. A man who, when rejected, seeks to destroy what he cannot possess." He turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. "I have spent 3 years fighting for this kingdom. I have watched good men die in mud and blood for the sake of honor and justice. I will not return home to find that same honor perverted, that same justice denied to those without the strength to defend themselves." The hall erupted in whispers. Eleanor saw calculation in the faces around her, saw the nobles reassessing, choosing sides. Adrian Blackwell was a war hero, a man of immense wealth and influence. Pemberton was merely rich. "What do you propose, Your Grace?" the magistrate asked carefully. Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his words fell like stones into still water. "I propose that Lady Ashford be released into my custody. I will stand surety for her character and conduct. If Lord Pemberton wishes to pursue these charges, he may do so through proper legal channels, with proper evidence, before a proper court. Not this spectacle." "You would risk your reputation for her?" Pemberton's voice was shrill with disbelief. Adrian finally looked at Eleanor again, and this time she saw something raw and unguarded in his eyes. Something that had not been there 3 years ago, when he was simply her husband's younger brother, the spare heir who smiled too easily and drank too much at dinner. "I would risk far more than reputation," Adrian said quietly. "The question is whether you are brave enough to face me if your accusations prove false." It was a challenge, clear and unmistakable. Pemberton was many things, but he was not stupid. He knew what it meant to accuse a duke's ward of such crimes. He knew the scandal would shift, the whispers would change direction. Pemberton looked around the hall, seeking support that was rapidly evaporating. Pemberton looked around the hall, seeking support that was rapidly evaporating. Pemberton looked around the hall, seeking support that was rapidly evaporating. The wound was minor, after all. Perhaps it was not poison, but merely a reaction to a reaction. Adrian's tone could have frozen wine. How medical, how convenient. He turned to the magistrate. "Remove Lady Ashford's chains. She is leaving with me." The magistrate hesitated only a moment before nodding to his men. Eleanor felt the iron cuffs fall away, felt circulation return to her hands in a rush of pins and needles. She swayed slightly, and Adrian was there, his hand beneath her elbow, steady and strong. "Can you walk?" he asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Together they moved through the crowd, and Eleanor felt the weight of 200 stares on her back, felt the whispers beginning already. The Duke of Ravencross defending his brother's widow with such passion? Surely there was more to the story. Surely there had always been more. They emerged into the cold night air, and Eleanor gulped it like a drowning woman breaking the surface. Adrian's carriage waited in the courtyard, black and imposing, the Ravencross crest gleaming silver in the torchlight. "Your Grace," she began, but he shook his head sharply. "Not here, not now." He handed her into the carriage with surprising gentleness, then climbed in beside her. The door closed, the driver cracked his whip, and they lurched into motion. Eleanor sat in the darkness, her hands trembling in her lap, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. She had been facing death. Now she was sitting beside Adrian Blackwell in a confined space, breathing in the scent of him, feeling the heat of his body just inches away. "Thank you," she whispered finally. "I cannot repay. I do not want repayment." His voice was harsh in the darkness. "What I want is the truth. Did Pemberton truly propose marriage, or did he attempt something worse?" Eleanor closed her eyes. "He cornered me in the library. He said I had no choice, that no one would believe a word against him. When I refused, when I tried to leave, he grabbed me. I pushed him away and he fell into the table. That is all." "That is all." Adrian laughed, a sound without humor. "That is assault, Eleanor. That is grounds for calling him out, not for you to stand trial. I am a widow with no family, no fortune, no protector," she said quietly. "The world does not care what happened to me. It only cares that a lord was embarrassed." The carriage hit a rut and threw her against Adrian's side. His arm came around her automatically, steadying her, and for a moment neither of them moved. Eleanor could feel his heart beating, could feel the tension in his frame. "You have a protector now," Adrian said, his voice rough, "whether you want one or not." Eleanor pulled away carefully, putting distance between them. "Your Grace, I appreciate what you have done, but I cannot accept your charity indefinitely. Pemberton was right about one thing. I have been living on the generosity of your family for 3 years. I should find employment, perhaps as a governess or—" "No." The word was flat, absolute. "No. You will not become a governess. You will not hide yourself away in some manor house, teaching spoiled children their letters while their father looks at you with speculation." Adrian's hands clenched on his knees. "You will come to Ravencross Abbey. You will live under my protection. And you will be safe." "Your Grace—" "Adrian!" He turned to face her, and even in the dim light filtering through the carriage windows, she could see the intensity in his expression. "You called me Adrian once, before my brother, before the war. Do you remember?" She did remember. A garden party, years ago, when she had been barely 20, and he had been a young man of privilege and charm. He had found her hiding behind the rose bushes, escaping the crowd, and they had talked for an hour about everything and nothing. He had made her laugh. She had made him think. And when he had asked permission to call on her father, She had almost said yes. Then Thomas had come home on leave, had seen her at church, had made his practical proposal, and Adrian had left for London the next day without a word. "I remember," she said softly, "but that was a long time ago." Not so long. His hand reached out, hovering just above hers, not quite touching. "I should have spoken then. I should have told you." He stopped, jaw clenching. "But I was a second son with nothing to offer, and you deserved security. Thomas could give you that." "Thomas gave me kindness," Eleanor said. "He gave me respect and freedom. We were friends." "I know." Adrian's hand dropped. "I know you mourned him. I know you cared for him in your way. But Eleanor," he leaned forward, his eyes searching hers, "did you never wonder why I left so suddenly? Why I volunteered for the most dangerous assignments? Why I stayed away even when Thomas wrote begging me to come home?" Her heart was pounding. "I assumed you had your reasons." "My reason was you." The confession hung in the air between them. "My reason was waking every day, knowing you were married to my brother, knowing I had no right to think of you, to want." He broke off, turning away. "I am sorry. That was inappropriate. You have just escaped one man's unwanted attentions. You do not need mine." Eleanor's mind was reeling. 3 years of widowhood, of loneliness, of believing herself forgotten. And all that time, Adrian had been fighting on foreign soil, carrying this burden. "It is not unwanted," she heard herself say. "It is terrifying and impossible and completely inappropriate, but it is not unwanted." Adrian's head snapped around. "Eleanor?" "Do not ask me to explain," she said quickly. "I cannot. I only know that when you walked through those doors tonight, when you looked at me across that hall, I felt something I have not felt since," she took a shaking breath, "since the last time I saw you." 5 years ago, in a garden, the carriage rolled to a stop. Through the window, Eleanor could see the lights of an inn, warm and welcoming. Adrian made no move to open the door. "We cannot," he said hoarsely. "You are my brother's widow. There are proprieties, expectations. If I court you, the scandal will destroy you worse than Pemberton's accusations ever could. I know. If I am seen showing you favor, every tongue in London will wag. They will say you bewitched first Thomas, then me. They will say you murdered my brother to clear the way. I know that too. Then why are you looking at me like that?" His voice broke. "Why are you making this harder than it already is?" Eleanor reached out and placed her hand over his. His skin was warm, calloused from sword work, marked with small scars. "Because 3 years ago, I stood beside your brother's grave and made a vow. I promised myself that if I survived, if I endured, I would never again choose safety over truth. I would never again accept a life half-lived." She met his eyes. "You saved me tonight, Adrian. Let me be honest with you in return. I do not know what this is between us. I do not know if it is love, or memory, or desperation. But I know I am tired of being afraid." Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned his hand and laced his fingers through hers. "I am afraid," he admitted. "I am terrified that I will fail you, that I will not be able to protect you from what is coming. Pemberton will not let this rest. He will find other ways to strike at you, and through you at me. Then we face it together," Eleanor said. "Or not at all." The inn's door opened, and a stable boy peered out, waiting. Adrian squeezed her hand once, then released it and pushed open the carriage door. "Together," he agreed. "God help us both." They took rooms at the inn, separate chambers on opposite ends of the corridor, because propriety had to be observed, even if hearts were laid bare. Eleanor lay awake in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, her body exhausted but her mind racing. Everything had changed in the space of hours. She had gone from condemned prisoner to protected ward, from hopeless to something that felt dangerously close to hope. A soft knock on her door made her sit up. "Yes?" "It is Adrian." His voice was muffled through the wood. "I am sorry to disturb you, but I need to tell you something. Something about Thomas." Eleanor wrapped a shawl around her nightgown and opened the door. Adrian stood in the hallway, still fully dressed, looking as sleepless as she felt. "What about Thomas?" she asked. Adrian glanced up and down the corridor, then stepped inside, leaving the door slightly ajar for propriety's sake. "He knew," Adrian said without preamble, "about my feelings for you. I told him before the wedding." Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. "What?" "I was drunk and angry and foolish. I confronted him, demanded to know why he had proposed to you when he knew I—" Adrian paced to the window and back. "He listened to everything I said. Then he told me that he had spoken to your father, learned of your family's deaths. He said he could offer you security immediately, while I could offer nothing but promises. He asked me if I loved you enough to let you have the life you deserved." "Oh, Thomas," Eleanor whispered. "He made me swear an oath," Adrian continued. "He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would take care of you, not just financially, but truly. He said," Adrian's voice roughened, "he said that you deserved to be loved the way I loved you, even if he could not be that man." Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. She had thought Thomas married her out of convenience, out of necessity. She had never imagined he had known, had chosen to step aside, even as he protected her. "He was a better man than either of us," Adrian said, "and I failed him. I stayed away because I could not trust myself around you. I let you live alone in that house, vulnerable to men like Pemberton, because I was afraid of what I would do if I saw you again." "You are here now," Eleanor said softly. "You kept your promise when it mattered most." "I am here," Adrian agreed. "And I am asking you, Eleanor, I am begging you to be patient with me. Let me do this properly. Let me court you openly. Scandal be damned. Let me give you time to grieve, to heal, to be certain of your own heart before we—" "Before we what?" she challenged. "Before we acknowledge what has always been between us? Before we stop pretending that we are merely a duke and his ward?" Adrian crossed the space between them in 2 strides. He framed her face with his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Before I kiss you," he said hoarsely, "and lose the last shred of my honor." Eleanor's breath caught. She could feel the heat of him, could see the war in his eyes between desire and duty. Part of her wanted to close the distance, to pull him down and damn the consequences. But another part, the part that had survived 3 years of whispers and suspicion, knew that Adrian was right. "Then do not kiss me," she whispered. "Not yet. Not until we can stand before the world and let them say what they will." Adrian rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "You are a wiser woman than I am a man. I have had more practice at sacrifice." They stood like that for a long moment, breathing the same air, trembling with restraint. Then Adrian stepped back, his hands falling to his sides. "Ravenscross Abbey," he said. "We will go there tomorrow. You will be installed as a guest, a family member. I will put it about that I am honoring my brother's wishes by providing for his widow. It will buy us time." "Time for what?" "Time for me to quietly investigate Pemberton. Time for the gossip from tonight to die down. Time for me to find a way to court you that will not destroy your reputation utterly." He smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him. "I did not fight a war to come home and fail at this." Eleanor smiled back despite herself. "You are very determined." "You have no idea." He moved to the door, paused with his hand on the frame. Eleanor, thank you for trusting me, for being honest, for giving me a reason to come home that was not just duty. Thank you for seeing me, she replied, for not looking at me the way they all did tonight, like something to be judged or used or discarded. I could never, Adrian said simply. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Eleanor was alone with the hammering of her heart and the impossible hope blooming in her chest. The morning brought rain and a fresh set of problems. Eleanor woke to find a maid at her door with news that a constable had arrived bearing a warrant for her arrest on behalf of Lord Pemberton. Adrian met the man in the inn's common room, still in his shirt sleeves, looking dangerous and uncivilized. The matter was settled last night, Adrian said coldly. Lord Pemberton withdrew his accusations. The constable, a narrow man with a pinched face, shook his head. My lord has reconsidered. He insists that the lady be brought to London for proper trial. Does he? Adrian's voice was soft, lethal. Tell me, constable, are you aware of the penalty for making false accusations against a peer's ward? The man paled. I am merely following orders, Your Grace. Then I suggest you return to Pemberton with new orders. Adrian tossed a purse of coins onto the table. That is for your trouble and discretion. You will report that Lady Ashford could not be found. You will further report that pursuing this matter may result in a countersuit for slander and assault. Am I clear? The constable snatched up the purse and nodded hastily. Yes, Your Grace, perfectly clear. After he left, Adrian turned to Eleanor with grim satisfaction. We are leaving now. Pemberton is more determined than I thought, which means he is more dangerous. Ravenscross will be easier to defend. They departed within the hour, this time with an armed escort of Adrian's men. The journey took 2 days through rain-soaked countryside, and by the time they reached the abbey, Eleanor was exhausted and anxious. She had heard of Ravenscross, of course, everyone had. The great Gothic pile rising from the Devonshire moors, seat of the Blackwell family for 3 centuries, rumored to be haunted by a dozen different ghosts. It looked like something from a dark fairy tale as they approached, all towers and battlements silhouetted against storm clouds. But inside, it was surprisingly warm, filled with light from enormous windows, and heated by modern fireplaces that banished the chill. The staff assembled to meet her, and Eleanor saw curiosity but not hostility in their faces. Adrian's housekeeper, Mrs. Thornbury, was a formidable woman of 60 who took one look at Eleanor's bedraggled state and swept her away to a suite of rooms that were decidedly not in the guest wing. His Grace instructed these chambers be prepared, Mrs. Thornbury said, opening the doors to a sitting room and bedroom decorated in shades of cream and gold. They belonged to the late Duchess, His Grace's mother. They have been closed for 10 years, but His Grace— She trailed off delicately. Eleanor understood the implication. These were not guest quarters. These were the rooms of the lady of the house. They are beautiful, Eleanor said carefully, but perhaps too grand. His Grace was most insistent. Mrs. Thornbury's expression softened. If I may speak freely, my lady, I have known His Grace since he was in leading strings. I have never seen him fight for anything the way he fought to bring you here safely. Whatever arrangement you have made with him, know that you have his complete loyalty. Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks. We have no arrangement beyond friendship and kinship. Of course not, Mrs. Thornbury agreed, but her eyes said she knew better. I will have a bath drawn and dinner sent up. You need rest, and His Grace has business to attend to before he can join you. Eleanor did rest, sinking into the copper tub and letting the hot water ease muscles sore from travel. She had just dressed in a borrowed gown when Adrian knocked on the door. "May I come in?" he asked. "Of course." He entered carrying a leather portfolio, his expression troubled. "I have news from London. Pemberton has gone to the king." Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. "The king? He is claiming that I have kidnapped you, that I am holding you against your will." Adrian set the portfolio on the table and began pulling out letters. "He has also accused me of ungentlemanly conduct and suggested that there is an improper relationship between us. How dare he?" "He dares because he has nothing to lose and everything to gain," Adrian interrupted. "If he can discredit me, turn the king against me, he removes the only obstacle to your prosecution. More than that, he damages my standing at court, my ability to influence policy. I have made enemies during the war, Eleanor. Military men who resent my successes, nobles who dislike my reforms. Pemberton has allies among them." Eleanor sank into a chair, her mind racing. "What can we do?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, studying the letters. When he looked up, his expression was resolved. "We marry," he said, "immediately, secretly. Once you are my wife, you are beyond Pemberton's reach. The accusations become moot." Eleanor's heart stopped. "Adrian, that is, we cannot. The scandal." "The scandal exists already." He moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. "Eleanor, I know this is not the proposal you deserve. I know you need time, that I promised to court you properly. But I will not risk your life for the sake of propriety. Marry me." "We can keep it secret until the furor dies down, then announce it. By then it will be fait accompli." "Your reputation." "Damn my reputation." His grip tightened. "I have faced cannon fire and cavalry charges. I have watched better men than me die in mud because they hesitated at the wrong moment. I will not hesitate now. I will not lose you because I was too much a gentleman to act." Eleanor searched his face, saw the desperation there, the fear he was trying to hide. She thought of Thomas, of his practical proposal that had saved her once. She thought of the garden, of young Adrian laughing at her jokes. She thought of the man who had stormed into that hall last night like an avenging angel. "All right," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." The relief in his eyes was palpable. He brought her hands to his lips, kissed her knuckles with shaking reverence. "Thank you. I swear to you, Eleanor, I will spend every day earning this choice. I will make you happy. I will keep you safe." "I know," she said, and realized she meant it. Whatever this was between them, old attraction, new necessity, something deeper, it was real. It was worth fighting for. Adrian stood, his mind already moving to logistics. "We will need a priest who can be discreet. I know a man, a former army chaplain, who owes me his life. He will come tonight if I send for him." "Tonight?" Eleanor felt dizzy. "Tomorrow at the latest. Eleanor, I am sorry. I know this is rushed." "It is not the wedding night I imagined as a girl," she admitted. "But then, nothing in my life has been what I imagined. Why should this be different?" He smiled at that, a real smile that reached his eyes. "You are extraordinary. Do you know that?" "I am practical," she corrected. "There is a difference." "No," Adrian said softly. "There is not. Not in you." The chaplain arrived after midnight, a thin man in his 50s who clasped Adrian's hand with genuine warmth. Mrs. Thornbury and the butler, Crawford, served as witnesses. The ceremony took place in the Abbey's private chapel, by candlelight, with rain drumming on the stained glass windows. Eleanor wore the borrowed gown and held a small bouquet of late roses that Mrs. Thornbury had somehow procured. Adrian wore his dress uniform, medals gleaming, looking every inch the war hero. When he took her hand, when he spoke the vows in that low, steady voice, Eleanor felt something shift in her chest. a door opening onto a future she had not dared imagine. I, Adrian Nathaniel Blackwell, take thee, Eleanor Margaret Hartley Blackwell. She was already a Blackwell, she realized. She had been one for 3 years. But this was different. This was choice, not convenience. This was desire, not duty. When the chaplain pronounced them husband and wife, when Adrian leaned down to kiss her, she expected something chaste and formal. Instead, his lips met hers with a hunger that stole her breath, with a promise of everything they had denied themselves. The kiss lasted only a moment, but it branded her, changed her. "My wife," Adrian murmured against her mouth. "Finally." The chaplain coughed discreetly. Adrian pulled back with obvious reluctance, then signed the marriage certificate with a flourish. Eleanor's hand shook slightly as she added her own signature. It was done. She was the Duchess of Ravencross, wife to the man who had loved her in secret for years. The witnesses departed with gold coins and sworn oaths of silence. Adrian led Eleanor back to her chambers, then paused at the threshold. "I will leave you to rest," he said formally, "unless, that is, if you would prefer." Eleanor understood what he was asking. It was their wedding night, but it was also a marriage of necessity, born of danger rather than romance. She could tell him to go, that she needed time. He would respect that choice. But she was tired of safety, tired of caution. "Stay," she said, "please." "I do not want to be alone tonight." Adrian's eyes darkened. "Eleanor, if I stay, I am not certain I can maintain the pretense of a gentleman. I have wanted you for too long, and tonight has stretched my control to breaking." "Then break," she whispered. "I want you to. I want to know what it feels like to be wanted for myself, not for my father's connections or my ability to manage an estate. I want one night where I am not a widow or an accused criminal or a scandal waiting to happen. I want to be your wife, Adrian, truly." He closed the distance between them, cupped her face in his hands. "You are certain?" Instead of answering, Eleanor reached up and began unbuttoning his uniform coat. Her fingers fumbled with the metals, the braiding, the complex fastenings. Adrian stood frozen, barely breathing, as she pushed the coat from his shoulders and started on his shirt. "Eleanor." "I am certain," she said firmly. "I have never been more certain of anything." That broke his restraint. He pulled her against him and kissed her with no gentleness, no hesitation. His hands found the laces of her gown, made quick work of them, and soon she was standing in her chemise, shivering despite the fire. "Eleanor." "I am certain," she said firmly. "I have never been more certain of anything." That broke his restraint. He pulled her against him and kissed her with no gentleness, no hesitation. His hands found the laces of her gown, made quick work of them, and soon she was standing in her chemise, shivering despite the fire. Adrian lifted her as if she weighed nothing and carried her to the bed. What followed was a revelation. After 3 years of marriage to Thomas, a kind man who had touched her with respect but no passion, Eleanor had thought she understood the physical aspects of matrimony. She had been wrong. Adrian worshipped her with his hands and mouth, discovered what made her gasp and arch, pushed her to heights she had not known existed. When he finally joined their bodies, when she clung to him and cried out his name, she understood for the first time what all the poets had been trying to capture. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathing hard, slick with sweat despite the cool night air. Adrian traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his expression one of wonder. "I have imagined this 1,000 times," he admitted. "In tents on the battlefield, in taverns on the march. None of my imaginings came close to the reality of you." Eleanor turned to face him. "I thought you had forgotten me. When Thomas said you were not coming home for the funeral, I could not bear it, Adrian interrupted roughly. I could not stand beside his grave and pretend I was only mourning a brother. I was mourning the fact that you were free, that the obstacle between us was gone, and I still could not have you. Not honorably, not without making you the target of every gossip in England. And now? Now you are my wife. Now anyone who speaks against you speaks against me. Let them try. He kissed her forehead, her eyelids, her lips. I will destroy Pemberton for what he tried to do. I will make him regret the day he looked at you with anything but respect. Eleanor shivered, but not from cold. There was something dangerous in Adrian's tone, something that spoke of the soldier he had become rather than the gentleman she remembered. She wondered what he had seen, what he had done in those 3 years abroad. She wondered if the war had changed him in ways that could not be seen. Adrian, she said carefully, what happened to you during the war? His hand stilled on her shoulder. For a long moment, he was silent. Then, haltingly, he began to speak. I volunteered for assignments that other men refused. I led charges that should have been suicide. I took risks that made my commanders furious. His voice was flat, emotionless. I think, in some dark part of my soul, I was hoping for an honorable death, a way to stop wanting what I could not have. Oh, Adrian. But death would not take me. I survived when better men fell. I came home decorated and praised, and all I could think was that I was a fraud. I had not been brave. I had been reckless, suicidal even. He met her eyes. Until I heard about Pemberton's accusations. Until I had a reason to live again. Eleanor's heart ached for him, for the pain he had carried alone. She kissed him softly, tasting salt, realizing he was crying. You are home now, she whispered. You are alive. We both are. And whatever comes next, we face it together. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Together, he agreed, his voice breaking. I swear it. They slept, finally, wrapped in each other. But their peace was short-lived. The morning brought armed men. Eleanor woke to shouting in the courtyard, to the sound of horses and weapons being drawn. Adrian was already up, pulling on breeches and boots, his face grim. What is happening? She asked, struggling into a dressing gown. Pemberton has petitioned the king for a writ of seizure, Adrian said shortly. He is claiming that I have kidnapped you and am holding you prisoner. Those are the king's men outside. Eleanor's blood ran cold. What do we do? Adrian strapped on his sword, checked his pistols. You stay here. Let me handle this. Adrian, no. Eleanor, he turned to her, caught her face in his hands. Trust me, I will not let them take you. I swear it on my life. Then he was gone, thundering down the stairs. Eleanor ran to the window and looked down on chaos. 20 armed men on horseback surrounded the house, wearing the king's livery. At their head was a nobleman she did not recognize, portly and self-important. Adrian strode out to meet them, alone and unarmed save for his sword. His voice carried clearly in the morning air. Sir Reginald, I did not know the king's justice had sunk to acting as Pemberton's errand boy. The nobleman flushed. Your Grace, I am here on His Majesty's direct orders. You will produce Lady Eleanor Ashford immediately, or I will be forced to search the premises. You will do no such thing. Adrian's hand rested on his sword hilt. Lady Ashford is not here under duress. She is here as my guest, under my protection. That is not what Lord Pemberton claims. Lord Pemberton is a liar and a would-be rapist. Adrian's voice rang out, shocking in its directness. He attempted to force himself on Lady Ashford. When she refused him, he manufactured charges to destroy her. I will swear to this before the king himself." Sir Reginald shifted uncomfortably. "Your Grace, these are serious accusations." "As are his." Adrian took a step forward. The soldiers tensed, hands moving to weapons. "I have fought for this kingdom. I have bled for it. I will not stand by while corrupt men pervert justice for their own petty revenge. If His Majesty wishes to question Lady Ashford, he may summon us both to court. But you will not enter my home, you will not threaten my household, and you will most certainly not lay hands on my wife." The last word fell like a bomb. Sir Reginald's mouth opened and closed. The soldiers murmured among themselves. "Your wife?" Sir Reginald finally managed. "As of last night." Adrian's smile was sharp. "Married in the presence of witnesses by a licensed chaplain. Lady Ashford is now the Duchess of Ravencross. Any action against her is an action against me, against my title, against the Crown's own peerage. I suggest you return to London and inform Lord Pemberton that his quarry is beyond his reach." Eleanor watched from the window, her heart in her throat. She saw Sir Reginald's face work through shock, anger, calculation. She saw him glance at the soldiers, at the Abbey's defensive walls, at Adrian, standing alone but utterly unafraid. "The king will want proof of this marriage," Sir Reginald said finally. "The king shall have it." Adrian gestured to Crawford, who appeared with the marriage certificate. "Signed and witnessed, legal in every particular." Sir Reginald examined the document, his expression souring. Finally, he thrust it back at Crawford and wheeled his horse around. "This matter is not finished, Your Grace. His Majesty will have questions." "His Majesty knows where to find me." Adrian watched them ride away, not moving until they were lost to sight beyond the trees. Eleanor ran down the stairs, across the hall, and flung herself into Adrian's arms. He caught her, held her tight, his heart racing beneath her ear. "That was incredibly foolish," she said into his chest. "They could have arrested you. They could have tried." Adrian tilted her face up, kissed her hard and quick. "Let them all come, Eleanor. Let Pemberton, let the king, let every gossip and scandalmonger in England. You are mine now. Nothing will change that." Mrs. Thornbury appeared, wringing her hands. Your Grace, what shall we do? If the king is truly angry." "Then I will go to London and face him myself." Adrian released Eleanor, though he kept her hand in his. "Mrs. Thornbury, have the house prepared for a siege, just in case. Crawford, send word to my solicitors. I want every legal document surrounding the Duchess situation reviewed. If Pemberton tries to move against us through the courts, I want to be ready." He turned back to Eleanor. "You should write to any friends you have, anyone who might speak in your favor. We need allies, and we need them quickly." The next week passed in a blur of activity. Adrian's solicitors arrived and began building a case against Pemberton. Eleanor wrote letters to old friends of her father's, to Thomas's few remaining relatives, even to some of the women she had helped during her time as a physician's daughter. Slowly, quietly, support began to trickle in. But Pemberton was not idle. Word came from London that he had convinced 3 other women to come forward with accusations against Eleanor, claims of poisoning, witchcraft, even murder. None of it was true, but the sheer volume of accusations was damning. Public opinion, already volatile, turned sharply against her. Adrian spent hours in his study, writing letters, calling in favors, reminding men of what he had done for them during the war. Eleanor watched him work himself to exhaustion, saw the shadows deepen under his eyes. She brought him food he did not eat, wine he barely touched. "Come to bed," she urged him one night, finding him still at his desk at 3 in the morning. "You cannot help me if you collapse." "I am close to something," he muttered, scanning another document. "Pemberton's finances are a mess. He has debts I can exploit, connections to some unsavory figures. If I can prove he is being paid to discredit me, if I can tie him to my political enemies—" "Adrian!" Eleanor took the paper from his hands, set it aside. "Look at me." He did, finally, his eyes bloodshot and haunted. "I cannot fail you," he said hoarsely. "I cannot let them take you from me. Not now, not when I finally have you." Eleanor knelt beside his chair, took his hands. "You have not failed me. You have given me more in 2 weeks than I had in 3 years. You have given me hope, love, a reason to fight." "Love?" He repeated the word like it was foreign. "You love me?" "I have loved you since I was 20 years old and too foolish to know what to do about it," she said simply. "I loved you when you were the charming second son. I loved you when you were the distant soldier. I love you now, as my husband, exhausted and desperate and completely ridiculous." Adrian laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and despair. He pulled her into his lap, held her as if she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "I love you," he said against her hair. "God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. The thought of losing you, of them dragging you to prison while I stand helpless." "Will not happen," Eleanor said firmly, "because you are not alone in this fight. I am here. Your household is here. Every person you have helped, every soldier who served under you, every friend who knows your character, they are all here. Pemberton is one bitter man with money and spite. We are more." Adrian pulled back to look at her, and she saw something shift in his expression, some of the desperation easing. "You are right," he said slowly. "I have been so focused on legal strategies and political maneuvering that I forgot the simplest weapon of all, which is the truth." He stood, carrying her with him. "Tomorrow we go to London, both of us. We face the king, the court, everyone, and we tell them exactly what happened. No hiding, no secrets. We let them see us together and dare them to believe we are anything but what we are, a man and woman who have fought for the right to love each other." Eleanor's heart swelled. "That is either brilliant or catastrophically stupid." "Probably both." Adrian kissed her, long and deep. "But I am done being afraid. I am done letting Pemberton control the narrative. We end this now." They departed for London at dawn, accompanied by an escort of Adrian's most loyal men. The journey took 2 days, and by the time they reached the city, Eleanor's nerves were stretched taut. She had not been to London since Thomas's funeral, had not faced the Tun's scrutiny since her world had collapsed. Adrian had taken rooms at a discreet hotel, and they spent the night before their audience with the king preparing their testimony. Eleanor rehearsed her story a dozen times, but Adrian kept shaking his head. "Just tell the truth," he insisted. "Do not try to make it palatable. Tell them that Pemberton assaulted you. Tell them you were terrified. Let them see your anger." "Ladies are not supposed to be angry," Eleanor said wryly. "Then be an improper lady," Adrian grinned. "You married me. That ship has sailed." The audience with the king was scheduled for 10 in the morning at St. James's Palace. Eleanor wore her finest gown, borrowed jewels that had belonged to Adrian's mother. Adrian wore his full-dress uniform, every medal and honor on display. They made an imposing couple as they entered the throne room. The king was younger than Eleanor expected, only 40, with intelligent eyes and a shrewd expression. Lord Pemberton stood to one side, looking smug and certain. On the other side were various court officials and nobles, including several Eleanor recognized as Adrian's friends from the war. Your Majesty. Adrian bowed deeply. Eleanor curtsied, keeping her eyes lowered. Duke Ravencross. The king's voice was cool. We are most interested in hearing your explanation for recent events. Lord Pemberton has made serious accusations regarding your conduct and that of the lady in question. Who is now my wife, Your Majesty? Adrian said clearly. The Duchess of Ravencross. The king's eyebrows rose. Indeed, a rather sudden marriage, was it not? Sudden, perhaps, but not impulsive. Adrian's voice was steady. I have known and admired Eleanor since before her first marriage to my brother. When I learned of Lord Pemberton's accusations, I recognized them for what they were, a vindictive attack on a defenseless woman. Defenseless? Pemberton sputtered. She attempted to poison me. Did she? Adrian turned to face him. Then show us proof. Show us witnesses who saw her administer poison. Show us the poison itself, properly analyzed by a chemist. Show us anything beyond your word against hers. I have her reputation, Pemberton shot back. Everyone knows she practices dark arts, that she is a trained physician's daughter who has saved countless lives with her knowledge of herbs and medicine, Adrian interrupted. A skill which, in a woman, is apparently grounds for accusation of witchcraft in this enlightened age. Several of the nobles shifted uncomfortably. The king leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Lord Pemberton, do you have concrete evidence of attempted murder, or do you base your accusations solely on suspicion and rumor? Pemberton flushed. Your Majesty, I have testimony from others who claim she— Who? Adrian demanded. Name them, bring them forward, let them repeat their claims under oath, in the presence of my solicitors. Let them face the penalty for perjury if they are lying. Silence. Pemberton looked around the room, clearly seeking support that was not forthcoming. Even his allies seemed reluctant to be drawn into the fray. The king sat back, thoughtful. Duchess Ravencross, we would hear from you directly. What is your account of events? Eleanor took a deep breath, felt Adrian's hand brush against hers in silent support. She stepped forward and spoke clearly, her voice carrying through the room. Your Majesty, Lord Pemberton came to me with an offer of marriage. When I refused, he attempted to force himself upon me. I pushed him away to defend myself, and he fell against a table containing medicine bottles I was preparing for tenants' children. He suffered a minor cut. Rather than admit to his assault, he invented these charges to destroy my reputation and punish me for rejecting him. The room erupted in whispers. Pemberton's face went crimson, then white. That is a damned lie, he shouted. Is it? Eleanor kept her gaze on the king. Then explain why you approached me alone in a closed room. Explain why your wound was minor when you claimed I administered poison. Explain why you waited until the Duke had returned from war to press these charges, when I was most vulnerable, most in need of protection. Your Majesty, one of Adrian's friends spoke up. I served with the Duke in Flanders. I can attest to his character and honor. If he says Lord Pemberton is lying, I believe him without question. As do I, another man added, and I can produce a dozen men who will say the same. More voices joined in, a growing chorus of support for Adrian and Eleanor. Pemberton looked around in growing panic, realizing the tide had turned against him. The king raised a hand for silence. It seems, Lord Pemberton, that your accusations are not as well-founded as you believed. The Duke of Ravencross is a decorated war hero with impeccable reputation. You, on the other hand, have produced no evidence, no credible witnesses, and stand accused of assault by a lady of quality. "She is not a lady!" Pemberton shouted desperately. "She is a fortune-hunting widow who seduced first one brother, then another. She is a witch who—" "Enough!" The king's voice cracked like a whip. "You have insulted a duchess in our presence. You have made accusations you cannot substantiate. You will formally withdraw these charges, Lord Pemberton, or face charges of slander and false accusation yourself." Pemberton gaped like a fish. "Your Majesty, I—" "Withdraw them, now!" There was no choice. Pemberton's shoulders sagged in defeat. "I withdraw the accusations," he muttered. "Louder," Adrian said softly, "so everyone can hear." Pemberton's hands clenched into fists. "I withdraw the accusations against the Duchess of Ravencross," he said through gritted teeth. The king nodded. "Duke Ravencross, you and your wife have our apologies for this unfortunate matter. We trust there will be no lingering ill effects." "Only if Lord Pemberton remembers his place in the future, Your Majesty," Adrian said. He bowed again, then offered Eleanor his arm. Together they walked from the throne room, heads high, ignoring the stares and whispers. Outside, in the sunlight of the palace courtyard, Adrian pulled Eleanor into a fierce embrace. "It is over," he breathed. "Finally, it is over." Eleanor clung to him, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot believe the king actually—" "Believed the truth," Adrian finished, "as I knew he would once he heard it from you." He pulled back, framed her face with his hands. "You were magnificent in there, terrifying and beautiful and absolutely magnificent." "I was terrified," she admitted. "That is what made you magnificent." He kissed her, not caring who saw, not caring about scandal or propriety. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "Take me home, Eleanor. Take me back to Ravencross and let us begin our life properly." They returned to the Abbey to find it in festive preparation. Mrs. Thornbury, having received word of their victory, had organized a celebration for the entire household and tenantry. There were ribbons and flowers everywhere, tables groaning with food, musicians tuning instruments in the great hall. "Mrs. Thornbury," Eleanor said, laughing through tears, "this is too much." "Nonsense, Your Grace," the housekeeper beamed. "This household has been waiting years for His Grace to bring home a bride. We are merely making up for lost time." The celebration lasted into the night. Eleanor danced with Adrian until her feet ached, then with tenants and soldiers and servants who all wanted to toast the new Duchess. She was kissed on the cheek by elderly ladies who remembered her father, embraced by young mothers whose children she had helped heal, congratulated by gruff men who clearly adored Adrian. As midnight approached, Adrian pulled her away from the crowd and led her up to the battlements. The music drifted up from below, mingling with laughter and the soft night air. The moon was full, painting everything silver. "I used to come up here as a boy," Adrian said, leaning against the stone wall. "I would look out over the moors and dream of adventure, of proving myself worthy of the Blackwell name. You have done that and more," Eleanor said softly. "No." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I have done nothing that matters except love you. Every battle I survived, every honor I received, it means nothing compared to standing here with you, knowing you are my wife, knowing we have fought for each other and won." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Adrian, I am not finished." He took her hands. "I know our beginning was not what either of us would have chosen. I know we have faced scandal and danger and nearly lost everything. But I would do it all again, endure it all again for this moment, for the privilege of calling you mine." "I am yours," Eleanor whispered. I think I always have been, from the moment you found me hiding in the roses." He kissed her then, slow and deep, a promise rather than a possession. When he pulled back, he was smiling. "Shall we go inside, wife? Or do you wish to scandalize the household by staying out here all night?" "Inside," Eleanor decided. "I have had enough scandal for one lifetime." They descended the stairs hand in hand, and as they entered their chambers, Eleanor felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Belonging. Home. Adrian locked the door, turned to her with heat in his eyes. "I have been patient all day," he said. "Kept my hands to myself, behaved like a gentleman. I am done being patient." Eleanor smiled, began unlacing her gown. "Then do not be." He crossed the space between them in one stride, swept her into his arms. They fell into bed together, a tangle of limbs and laughter and passion, celebrating their victory in the most fundamental way. And afterward, lying wrapped in each other, Eleanor thought about how strange life was, how unpredictable. She had been prepared to die. Instead, she had found a love worth living for. "What are you thinking?" Adrian murmured against her hair. "That I am grateful," she said, "for all of it, even the terrible parts, because they led me here." "Here is where you belong," Adrian said firmly. "Here with me. Always." "Always," Eleanor agreed. And as she drifted into sleep, safe in her husband's arms, she believed it. The next morning brought a letter from Pemberton's solicitors. He was leaving England, the letter said, relocating to his estates in Scotland. He would not be returning to London for the foreseeable future. "Good riddance," Adrian said, tossing the letter into the fire. "Though I suspect he will nurse his grudge. Men like that do not forget." "Let him nurse it from a distance," Eleanor said practically. "I have more important things to concern myself with." "Such as?" "Such as learning how to be a duchess." Eleanor gestured to the mountain of correspondence on the desk. "I have invitations, requests for patronage, letters from people I do not know. I feel completely overwhelmed." Adrian came to stand behind her chair, his hands on her shoulders. "You will be brilliant. You already are. But Eleanor, you do not have to do everything at once. Take time, learn as you go, and remember that you have me to help you." She leaned back against him, drew strength from his solid presence. "What would you have done if the king had sided with Pemberton?" "Fled to France, probably." Adrian's tone was light, but Eleanor heard the truth beneath it. "I meant what I said in that throne room. I would have given up everything rather than let them take you." "Your title? Your lands? Everything?" "All of it." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I learned something in the war, Eleanor. I learned that honor and duty and all the pretty words we use to justify our actions, they mean nothing if we lose sight of what we are fighting for. I fought for you. I would have died for you. Losing wealth and position would have been a small price." Eleanor turned in her chair, looked up at him. "I love you," she said simply. "I know I have said it before, but I need you to hear it again. I love you, Adrian Blackwell. Not the Duke, not the war hero. You. The man who found me in a garden and made me laugh. The man who came home to defend me. The man who sleeps beside me and holds me when I have nightmares." Adrian's eyes glistened. "I do not deserve you." "Probably not," Eleanor agreed, making him laugh. "But you have me anyway, so you had better make the best of it." "I intend to." He pulled her to her feet, kissed her with all the passion of a man who had nearly lost everything. "Every single day, for the rest of our lives, I intend to make the best of it." The weeks that followed were the happiest of Eleanor's life. She and Adrian fell into a rhythm, learning each other's habits and quirks, discovering the small intimacies of married life. They took long walks on the moors, explored the Abbey's many rooms, hosted dinners for Adrian's old comrades and Eleanor's few remaining friends. Slowly, carefully, they built a life together. Not the scandalous, rushed marriage that society whispered about, but a genuine partnership founded on trust and tested by fire. One evening, 3 months after their wedding, Eleanor found Adrian in the library. He was staring at a letter, his expression troubled. "What is it?" she asked. "The king has offered me a position," Adrian said slowly. "Minister of War. He wants to reform the military, and he believes my experience qualifies me." Eleanor sat beside him. "That is a great honor." "It is also a political minefield." Adrian set the letter down. "I would have to spend months in London, deal with bureaucrats and politicians, fight battles in committee rooms rather than on fields. And I would have to leave you here. Or I could come with you," Eleanor suggested. "Face London together, as we have faced everything." Adrian looked at her, hope and doubt warring in his expression. "You would do that? After everything that happened there?" "I would do that," Eleanor confirmed. "I am the Duchess of Ravencross. It is time I started acting like one. Time I stopped hiding in the country and took my place in society." "They will talk," Adrian warned. "They will dredge up the old scandal, whisper about how quickly we married. Let them." Eleanor took his hand. "I am tired of being afraid of gossip. You taught me that, you know. When you walked into that hall and claimed me in front of everyone, you showed me that love is worth fighting for, worth defending, worth proclaiming loudly, even when the world wants you to be quiet." Adrian pulled her into his lap, held her close. "You are braver than I am." "No," Eleanor said. "I am just standing on your shoulders, looking farther because you lifted me up." He laughed, a sound of pure joy. "When did you become such a poet?" "When I married one." She kissed him. "Accept the position, Adrian. Make a difference. Change things for the better. And I will be beside you every step of the way." "Together," Adrian said, echoing the vow they had made on their wedding night. "Together," Eleanor agreed. They went to London in the spring, taking up residence in the Blackwell townhouse in Mayfair. Eleanor prepared herself for hostility, for cut direct and whispered insults. Instead, she found curiosity. The Tun, it seemed, loved nothing more than a romantic story, and the tale of the Duke who had stormed home from war to save the woman he loved had captured imaginations. Oh, there were still those who disapproved, who sniffed at the scandal and whispered about impropriety. But Eleanor had Adrian's ring on her finger and his unwavering support at her side. She held her head high and slowly, steadily began to win over society through sheer determination and charm. She became known for her charity work, using her medical knowledge to help the poor. She established a hospital for wounded soldiers, funded by Adrian's considerable fortune. She hosted salons where writers and artists and thinkers gathered, making the Blackwell townhouse a center of intellectual life. And through it all, Adrian served the king with distinction. He reformed military procurement, improved conditions for common soldiers, pushed for better treatment of veterans. He was not always popular. Reform never was. But he was respected. 5 years after their marriage, Eleanor stood in the same throne room where she had once defended herself against Pemberton's accusations. This time, she was there as one of the king's honored guests, watching as Adrian received yet another commendation for his service. "I am so proud of you," she whispered as they left the palace. Adrian squeezed her hand. "None of it would matter without you." They walked through the London streets in the early evening light, two people who had fought for their right to love and won. Somewhere in Scotland, Pemberton nursed his bitterness. Somewhere in England, there were still those who disapproved. But here, now, Eleanor and Adrian had everything that mattered. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked suddenly. "The scandal, the struggle, everything we endured?" Eleanor thought about the question seriously. She thought about the terror of standing accused, the humiliation of chains, the fear of death. She thought about the rushed wedding, the political battles, the years of proving themselves to a skeptical world. "No," she said finally, "not for a moment. Because all of it, every difficult step, brought us here. To this life, this love, to each other." Adrian stopped walking, pulled her into his arms right there on the street, not caring who saw. "I love you," he said fiercely. "I have loved you for 10 years, and I will love you for 10,000 more." "I will hold you to that," Eleanor said, laughing through happy tears. They stood there in the fading light, two souls who had found each other across scandal and war, across doubt and danger. They had been tested and had emerged stronger. They had been condemned and had proven themselves worthy. They had been separated and had fought their way back together. And now, finally, they had peace. The peace of two people who knew each other's worst moments and best dreams, who had chosen each other not once but 100 times in 100 different ways. As they walked home through the London streets, hand in hand, Eleanor thought about how stories were supposed to end, with a dramatic climax, a final battle, a perfect resolution. But real love, she realized, was not about endings. It was about beginnings that never stopped beginning. It was about choosing your partner every day, in small ways and large. It was about building a life one moment at a time, one choice at a time, one act of faith at a time. And so their story continued, not with a grand finale, but with a simple truth. They loved each other, they fought for each other, and they would do so until their very last breath. That night, in their bedroom at the townhouse, Adrian held Eleanor close and whispered promises into her hair. Promises of tomorrow and next year and all the years to come. And Eleanor, who had once believed herself destined for loneliness, who had stood in chains expecting death, whispered promises back. They had fought battles in throne rooms and drawing rooms and in the deepest chambers of their own hearts. They had faced scandal and gossip and the judgment of a world that did not understand them. They had survived separation and doubt and the terrible fear of loving too much. And they had won. Not because they were perfect, but because they were perfectly matched. Not because their love was easy, but because it was worth every difficult moment. Not because the world accepted them, but because they accepted each other, completely and without reservation. As Eleanor drifted into sleep in her husband's arms, she smiled. Let others whisper. Let history debate whether their love was scandalous or romantic, improper or inspiring. She knew the truth, and so did Adrian. They had found each other twice, once in a garden, once in a hall of judgment. They had chosen each other twice, once in haste, once in certainty. And they would love each other forever, not despite the obstacles, but because of them. That was the real story. Not the Duke who returned from war to defend the woman he loved, though that was part of it. Not the widow who faced death and found salvation, though that was part of it too. The real story was simpler and more profound. Two people who loved each other enough to fight the entire world for the right to be together. Two people who looked at scandal and danger and impossible odds and said, yes, this is worth it. You are worth it. And that, Eleanor thought as sleep claimed her, was the only story that mattered. The end.